So as we've hit the midway point of 2019, we've had several storylines in the scene emerge of different teams really rising up the ranks. You know, Team Liquid finally taking the #1 spot due to some of their great results and due to the inactivity of Astralis and their flop at ECS. You've had Ints really solidify themselves as a top 3 team. You've had Furia come up into the top 5 with some great results at Dallas and ECS and having built themselves up over the course of last year. You have Energy, who looks exciting with some of their results, where they have just made a big roster with Stanislaw coming in for DAPS, and we're not really sure if that'll continue or not, but still some of their results this year have been interesting. And hell, even North has been able to get some cool stuff going with Valdez, the in-game leader, and Yugi on board. So it's been neat to see some of these different teams creeping up. Obviously, Mousesports is very exciting with their one at DreamHack Tour and some of the stuff they've done in EPL. And you know, even G2 has improved. But one of the biggest stories has been the fact that Vitality has been able to catapult themselves also within the top 5, and they've won several tournaments here recently. I mean, they've won 3 out of their last 4, I guess, though one of those events was quite small when it comes to, you know, the prestige of the LAN itself, but still some really big finishes from this team. Not only that, but they also were able to qualify for ESL1 Cologne, so they'll be at that big tournament despite the fact they won't be at the EPL finals, and they're really ramping up quite nicely going into this next major cycle. So they have been such a fun team to watch for a lot of different reasons, but I just wanted to kind of talk through what's kind of happened with this team since the end of last year, because honestly at the end of 2018, you know, back when they still had Happy on the team, there wasn't a whole hell of a lot to be excited about. I mean, they had a good finish at DreamHack Atlanta, you know, beating teams like Complexity, Luminosity, Rogue, and Fragsters. That was November of 2018. That was pretty cool, but they really struggled to even qualify for the minor. You know, they initially lost out on one of the Star Ladder qualifiers to Spirit, and you know, they had lost the smaller online cup to Valiant, what is now Crazy, which is a shit name, whatever. And so it was pretty mixed results, not much positive to hang on to outside the Atlanta result, and things just weren't looking that great. And then they made the roster change, obviously, going into this year, bringing Alex on for Happy, eventually transitioning Alex into an in-game leader, though I'm not 100% sure when that actually happened. And even to this day, I'm not 100% sure how the leadership structure works. Like, I've heard there are still CT sides that MPK calls, and I think MPK maybe calls the T side of Inferno. That seemed to be indicated in an interview they did at Summit, but Alex apparently is kind of the main IGL for their other T side. So I'm not really sure how much credit goes either way, but certainly you can tell that they played differently, and you have to give a lot of credit to Alex for that, probably, and maybe their coach as well. Xtaz, I believe is his name, seems to be getting some credit in interviews that Vitality are doing. So I'm not sure how much impact the coaches have, but again, you can definitely tell that they play a more refined version of Counter-Strike, a more disciplined style. They still have their gaps, but they definitely have had a pretty drastic improvement in how they play, which we'll talk a little bit about more later. But initially, things still weren't that great. I mean, they did qualify for the major to the European minor, but it was heavily off the back of ZywOo carrying them. And if anybody wants to contest that, I mean, all you got to do is look at the numbers. I mean, ZywOo went plus 81 KD at that minor. The second best player on the team was NBK at 0. Neutral. Everyone else was negative KD, and Zai was out there plus 81. So if that's not carrying, I don't know what the fuck is. Like, this dude was definitely just destroying people and really helped to make it onto the major. And then at the major, they missed out on top 8, but at least they put up a decent showing, right? I mean, they buzzed through the challenger stage with very little trouble, other than that initial loss to Tyloo in the opening game, but then buzzed through after that. Legend stage, went 2-3, very close to top 8, got beat out narrowly by NIP in a best of 3, also lost the best of 3 to Renegades after having beat Cloud9 and Big, and lost a really close game to Navi on Mirage in double overtime. So pretty decent showing at Katowice. I mean, it would have been nice to get top 8 over NIP. I feel like that really would have solidified a good result for them. But all in all, not bad. And then they go to Starlighter I-League Season 7, where it's a best of 3 Swiss system, and they're able to at least make the playoffs with that. Again, beating Big, actually beating Ints. That's real big time shit right there, getting a 2-1 victory over Ints. Then after beating Ints, they obviously lost to Fnatic, but still managed to beat Spirit to make the playoffs, and then had a really close quarterfinals matchup against Energy. I mean, their first map went into triple overtime on Overpass, for instance, so had a pretty good showing there. But the real increase in play came at this small event in Belgium, which I can't even pronounce, so I won't even try. But they actually beat G2 there and Sprout, and were able to get a title. Then they qualified for the ECS finals, they qualified for ESL1 Cologne, and here's where some of their online results start kicking in. But the big run is what took place basically just throughout May going into the beginning of June, which is, of course, winning CS Summit 4. It was a best-of-2 group system there where they beat Ghost outright, they beat Energy outright, they beat Liquid outright, they split maps with Ints and split maps with Renegades, so pretty good run through the group stage there, only dropping a couple of maps the whole way through. Then they 2-1'd Ints and 2-0'd Team Liquid to win the title. That is beating 2 top 3 teams in the world who were pretty solid top 3 teams. I mean, Ints had been, really in that area ever since they had their great run at the major, making the finals, and Liquid has been a top 3 team for the bulk of 2018 and pretty much all through 2019. So these are some really big victories to get in the playoffs CS Summit 4. Just impressive stuff. Then they go to DreamHack Masters Dallas. They're able to get through the groups of that. Obviously, they lost their opening game to North on Overpass in a very close game. Tore through the lower bracket, though, just fine. Big victories over NIP and North included in that. And then they wound up losing to Furia in kind of a one-sided fashion, I guess you could say, in what would be considered the quarterfinals. But with that format, it's still a top 6 finish for them at Dallas. And then they come to the ECS Season 7 finals, their most recent result, and they win another title. And they do it by beating out Complexity and Groups after having a tough game with North. So not the greatest group stage performance, but nonetheless taking care of business. And then they beat Energy and they beat Furia, 2 really solid top 10 teams in the world. Furia now kind of in the top 5 after this result. So not a bad showing. Obviously, the Summit result probably is a bit more impressive just based on who they beat to get the title there. But nonetheless, they're taking care of business. They're beating top 10 teams pretty consistently. They've beaten some top 3 teams with Instant Team Liquid recently as well. So they look mighty, mighty dangerous. These are some really great results. If we talk about their map pool, it's actually shaping up quite nicely. Like their Dust 2 is obviously really strong, 9-4 record offline, wins over teams like Ints and Big and NIP and Valiant, which is now crazy. They've lost to a couple teams they probably shouldn't have, like Spirit, but all in all, pretty good Dust 2. Their Inferno, they've won the last 6 out of 8 games offline. They've beaten Ints twice. They've beaten Energy. They've beaten this North team. They've had a couple of losses, but typically did pretty decent teams like Renegade, some kind of rough losses to like Tyloo and such, but still overall really good Inferno. So that's 2 matches they've got. Mirage, I will admit the results here overall are quite mixed, but they have beaten some really good teams at times, like Team Liquid, like North. Their losses are to good teams like Ints, like a Renegades, like an Energy, like Fnatic earlier on, who was actually pretty impressive kind of earlier in the year. So their losses aren't to, teams that are just kind of a joke or anything like that. They're losing to good teams. And so I guess their Mirage is a bit more of a toss-up, not as solid as Dust 2 or Inferno, but still capable of playing it. Then their Nuke. Their Nuke is so powerful. 11-4. They've beaten Liquid twice. They've beaten Energy. They've beaten some really, really good teams. And their losses are to really good teams like Ints, like Furia. So they have a really powerful Nuke. Might be their best map, but actually I would say it's probably number 2 because their best map happens to be Overpass, where they are 10-3 overall. They've won the last 7 out of 8 games played, and this includes beating Liquid once, Ints twice, NIP, beating some really, really good teams. Their only losses on this map are 3, and 2 of those 3, one is an overtime loss to G2, and one is a triple overtime loss to Energy. So they are really, really good in Overpass. So they basically have Overpass and Nuke locked in as their top 2 maps. They're quite good on Dust 2 and Inferno, and they're capable of playing Mirage, though it is a bit mixed. Their Vertigo, the fact that they can play it at all is enough to probably help them out a lot in map pick ban situations. I mean, I think they've played it once and won it once. I can't remember if that was maybe at Summit. I think they beat Renegades on it at Summit. And that was the newest version, if I'm not mistaken. So the fact that they've gone out there, they've played it against a decent team on the newest version and won, probably is enough to scare most teams away who probably don't have much time in the map, so that's always something that they kind of have in their back pocket. They obviously don't play Train. They've never played it offline with this 5, actually. That's pretty much their permaban. So they permaban out Train. They can leave Vertigo out there because most of the teams will probably ban it for them, and then they have, 2 super strong maps, 2 pretty stable maps, and one that they can at least play. So that's a pretty sick map pool. When you talk about individual performances, ZywOo is just one of these crazy special talents. Like, I didn't know that we would get another player like this. I mean, Simple was obviously this big prodigy talent that just puts up sick numbers on an in and out basis. Best player in the world last year. Probably going to go down as the best player in 2019 as well. We're halfway through the year. He's definitely solidly up top in the rankings in pretty much every statistical category. Just below ZywOo. ZywOo's kind of gaining ground on him, though, in a lot of categories. And actually now, after ECS, there might be some categories where maybe ZywOo is number 1. So it's actually nuts to see that we have another talent like this. I mean, I would say like a once-in-a-generation player, but obviously not, because we do have someone like Simple in CSGO. Obviously, Nico, obviously, still a really powerful player. Device, a very powerful player. There's several really special talents in our scene that have been consistently strong for years on end. But ZywOo seems like he's going to be that next guy. I mean, he really hasn't played any big lands. I mean, the first big land he played was actually probably the European minor in IM Katowice, and that's just the beginning of 2019. So he's only been active in big events for, what, like 4 or 5 months? I mean, he did play that DreamHack Atlanta event with Vitality at the end of 2018, was a monster there, MVP, won the title, but that was a smaller event against smaller teams, took care of business, obviously, dropped a plus 90, definitely insane numbers. But what he's done at the major, what he did at Starlighter Season 7, what he's done at these titles that they've won at CS Summit and ECS. I mean, at Summit, he was plus 111, and ECS, he was plus 77. I mean, that's just his KD ratio, by the way. When you look at like the damage per round, you look at the kills per round, you look at the op specific statistics. I mean, this dude is just such a special talent. He was carrying this team through the minor and things of that nature, and even was a huge reason why they won DreamHack Open Atlanta. They didn't really have much support around him when it came to fragging power. I think the big thing that's really helped out Vitality is the fact that other people have started to step up around him. But even if that's the case, there's no denying how special ZywOo really is, how impactful he can be. You know, he's one of those oppers that isn't reliant on aggressive and snappy aim and things of that nature. He certainly has that capability, but he can also play the standard opping style when he needs to and still be effective. So you can do like the full spectrum of opping, and guess what? His rifle's pretty fucking good too if he can't get an AWP. So he really is Simple-esque in his versatility, his ability to do these crazy aggressive plays, but also be able to play standard when he needs to and play within the team more. He obviously doesn't have the same longevity yet as someone like a Simple or a Nico or some of these guys who have been able to put up fantastic numbers for years on end. Again, he's only been playing big events for like 4 or 5 months, if we're honest. But I mean, unless something drastically happens to him that causes his form to, you know, just ridiculously deteriorate, I mean, this guy is on pace to be, you know, probably maybe the number 2 player of the year behind Simple for 2019. Certainly going to be within the top 5, just what he's done alone these first 6 months of 2019. And I mean, fuck, man, if he keeps this up, he is going to go down as one of the greats of all time in this game. So it's just been crazy cool to see a talent like this emerge and just the type of plays he can make. The other big thing that helped this team out lately has been Apex's growth and form. I mean, ever since that small event they won in Belgium, you know, the CS Summit 4 performance, the performance at ECS Season 7, this dude's putting up really great numbers from an entry fragging role. There are some maps like Overpass where he's not as much of a pure entry, but still, you know, the bulk of the time he is creating those openings. He is doing what he needs to do. The fact that his form is picked up has been so great for Vitality. He really has been the next big piece after ZywOo when it comes to fragging production for the team to get them the kills they need to actually get results. So definitely got to tip your hat to Apex. This dude's a fucking soldier. Has done this time and time again throughout his career. He's definitely had his dips at times throughout his time in CSGO, you know, dating back to like 2013, 2014. He's had his little lulls where he's had tough offline performances for a stretch of a few months, but he always seems to be able to recover. And I think that's kind of crazy to think this dude's been playing for 6 years and always able to kind of dig it back and be able to get back to form that's actually really impactful for his team. And he's doing it again. He's had a great run of 4 events. So if he keeps this up, he keeps being that number 2 guy after ZywOo, this team's going to continue to be dangerous just off that alone and their newfound playing style. Now, here's the other big thing that's actually been nuts and something I couldn't have predicted, because you knew ZywOo was going to be good. You figured maybe there was a chance Apex could get back into form and he could be really dangerous. But what I couldn't anticipate, what probably a lot of people didn't, is that Alex has been so fucking good lately. Like, it's been unreal. You know, like, he actually put up really great numbers at Summit and ECS where they won those 2 titles. I mean, through the bulk of his career on LDLC, I was never really impressed by him very much. I remember casting him at a couple of DreamHack Open events in 2017 at, I think it was like Leipzig and Denver and a couple other events he played. And he just wasn't really that impressed with me on LDLC. Didn't really see what the hype was around him, even though some people were kind of giving him a bit of praise. I just didn't really see it. But now he's come onto this team. Yeah, his first few events of Vitality weren't that great. Definitely, you know, didn't do that well at, you know, the European minor or the major itself or Star Ladder, but these last few events he's really picked up his form. And not only has he been a good individual fragger, obviously the main thing that makes him great is his in-game leading. And we'll talk a little bit about the strategy of the team later, but he definitely seems to be running these T-sides quite well. I mean, they're very efficient. They're a lot more disciplined. There are some gaps, which we'll talk about a bit later, but all in all, it's definitely a way more structured, defined playing style that's just way more effective and efficient than anything that they had before he joined the team throughout their stretch of, you know, since 2018, like late 2018. So got to tip your hat to him on both fronts, leading and fragging pretty well individually lately. Now, the other two, MBK and RPK, I mean, they'll have their occasional games where they pop off. They definitely can have impact in certain situations, especially RPK on like a map like Overpass, for instance. He does have a more active role, so he is going to create those openings at times alongside like Zywoo and stuff like that, and Alex. So yeah, I mean, they can definitely have their big games, but they're more of role players. They're more just kind of doing their job. The main focus is certainly like Apex and Zywoo. Alex's fragging has been out of control lately as well, kind of being the other entry outside of Apex. And yeah, I mean, they're playing fine. I mean, I guess MBK didn't have the greatest ECS event, but has played pretty well through the other events they've played recently. And like I said, he's going to be able to do his job, kind of be a secondary caller, call some CT sides, be the glue of the team, fill in gaps, play the edge of the map where he needs to facilitate someone else. Definitely taking care of business on that front. And then RPK, again, his overall numbers aren't going to jump off the page, but can have big games at times, can do his job, never going to be a crazy fragging burden on the team that's really causing you problems. So you're getting good production out of the lineup. Now, that is obviously the one scary thing. How long can that last? I mean, I'm pretty sure you can keep banking on Zywoo being a monster, but can Apex keep up this form? I mean, he might dip a little bit, but even if he dipped a little bit, it probably would still be fine. The biggest thing is I don't know if Alex can keep playing like this. Like, he's never had a stretch that lasted very long where he was fragging like he is now. So that's the one big thing to keep an eye on. And then, yeah, can NBK and RPK maybe pick it up a little bit, stay the same? Those are also going to be big factors on whether or not this team's going to have enough firepower to continue to compete. But right now, so far, so good. We talked about their results, talked about their map pool. Last thing to really talk about is kind of their strategy. Now, there are some holes in their strategy. There's no doubt about that. In particular, how they were, having some rough times with force buys and anti-ecos and things of that nature at some of these most recent events. Particularly, I think some stats came out from ECS where they were like really tanking in those types of rounds. So that's going to be something to think about. At times, they can still get a little bit maybe too reckless with their own economy force buying a bit, though I feel like that's really come down a lot and really isn't as much of a problem as it ever used to be in the past. So there's some little gaps here and there. But all in all, this team's been very impressive. I mean, when you look at some of the maps they play a lot, like Dust 2, for instance, yeah, they can do spawn-based plays, really aggressive stuff, 1-4 split play, some of those things that are very much ingrained in kind of the core of some of these players who are used to playing that play style, used to being really assertive and fast-paced and the 1-4 style and things of that nature. They definitely still have that element, but they're not totally relying upon that. They can play out default. Someone like RPK can play the edge of the map, MBK is going to play the other edge of the map, Zywoo, Alex, Apex, they can be kind of the spall fighting for map control like Catwalk or Middle or things of that nature. And they even have a couple of pretty cool executes on this map. Like they can do, the whole smoke on CT spawn, drop down from Catwalk, split A with the smoke on the corner of long cross, and kind of split the A bomb site 3 different ways with like maybe a late long A flank while also coming up cat cross and also, coming up the CT slope with spawn blocked off. So that's a pretty good play. They even had like this one execute on B that I saw where they'll smoke the entrance of the B tunnels, but then they'll just use that as cover to throw a bunch of Molotovs on platform and inside the bomb site. So they have a couple of cool little set pieces. They're not reliant on the aggressive play. They can play more standard and default, and they can throw in these really neat set pieces at times. They can play Inferno just fine. I mean, no one's really reinventing the wheel in Inferno, but they definitely are able to play the standard map control style just fine, as well as throwing in some really good split plays on A. They have good smokes on Arch and Library and Pit and things of that nature to coordinate these attacks and these splits up lane and moto wrap. That's very well coordinated, and they're trading. Their timing's good. Their utility is good. So they have the basics down really, really well. I would say their Mirage is a little bit more of kind of a fast-paced, scrappy style where they just kind of gather up swarm and trade with 1-4 type plays, but they can also play standard. They do have a couple of cool split plays through Connector, Ramp, and Palace, where they can coordinate these different timings on these different splits very effectively. They can mix in the fast dry hits to catch people off guard. So that they're well-rounded. Again, they're not reliant on aggression. They're able to throw in the cool stuff. And on Overpass, I mean, I found it kind of weird that they have Apex playing outside B instead of kind of an entry with Alex on, the A side of the map, as most other maps is kind of MBK, RPK playing the edges, and Apex and Alex kind of the entry duo. But this map, for whatever reason, Apex is able to play B pretty effectively. He can be kind of an aggressive force at short, which I guess is quite nice. RPK is actually fine playing with Alex on A and creating openings. They can play defaults just fine with A-site smoke walls that they pull off in the mid to late round. They can do the heavy connector play. They can do these faster B plays with good utility or dry hits. So again, like, I don't want to go into everything, although I've been quite detailed already, but that they have a good style. Like, they have a good mixture of kind of their roots of playing this scrappy, aggressive style, but they can do more disciplined plays. They can do, at times, some more elaborate set pieces with a little bit higher yielding utility, and they can really change it up. And that's kind of what you have to do in today's game. You kind of have to be able to play to this meta of being very dynamic in your play style. There's hardly a team out there that can rely on just one play style and use that to be a successful top 10 team in the world. It's not really an age of specialist anymore. It's more of an age of being a balanced team. Now, certainly you'll have some teams that lean one more direction towards the other, like Furia obviously leans more towards an aggressive pass-paced style, particularly off the back of Art doing these really wacky opening plays. Obviously, this Vitality team can lean more towards the aggressive end of the spectrum. Even Liquid at times can, right? Whereas someone like Ent's typically going to be a little bit more default. But all in all, to be able to be great in this day and age, you have to be able to mix it up, and that's what Vitality can do that they couldn't do before. They didn't really have well-established defaults. They didn't have the best roles. They didn't have the best team play and mid-round protocols. Now they're starting to build some of that with Alex as a leader. Maybe their coach Xtaz helping with that. Maybe MBK still kind of guiding as a secondary caller, as he's done a lot throughout his career. Whatever the case may be, this team has really skyrocketed in a way that I couldn't have expected. You know, I kind of saw the Ents thing coming when I saw how well they were doing in smaller events throughout 2018. I could even tell that Furia had some hope at challenging for a top 15 or top 10 position in the world, just based on, you know, how they were doing in the North American scene throughout, you know, mid to late 2018, and kind of what we saw at a couple of international events, like what we saw in Rio, for instance, earlier in the year, where they made the finals of that and had a pretty good series against Avangar. You can kind of see some of that, but with Vitality, based on kind of what you were seeing, it was hard to ever think they could, you know, threat a top 3 position in the international rankings right now. But their results lately are something that cannot be denied anymore. You know, they have been fantastic, and it's been great to watch, and they have a lot going for them, and hopefully they can keep it up. I mean, again, there are some areas you got to be concerned with. Can players really keep up this individual form like Alex, like Apex? You know, can they continue to adjust and add new things to their playbook as they need to stay ahead of the curve and not let people counter-strat them? Can they tidy up some of their issues dealing with, you know, force buys and dealing with anti-eco situations? You know, these are definitely some things that raise concern and do make you wonder what their ceiling really is and if they're going to start, you know, stumbling backwards at some point. But right now, things are looking great, and it's been fun to watch them rise up. So that's it for me. Hope you folks enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe for more content. Catch you next time.